Welcome to Cravings Control for Fat Loss. I'm your host, Laura Cavallo, former sugar binger, overeater, and yo-yo dieter turned fat loss and cravings coach for hundreds of busy women. Here at Cravings Control for Fat Loss, I'll be sharing mindset, movement, and metabolism strategies for those who are ready to ditch the fat diet cycle and slim down without counting calories, tracking points, or giving up any of the foods they love. Get ready to embrace progress over perfection, grace over guilt, and bring curiosity and learning to the inevitable ups and downs of your life. Expect a decrease in your cravings while seeing and feeling an improvement in how you look, how you feel, and your overall quality of life. I am so excited you're here, boo. Let's get started. Ashley Borden is one of the most sought-after fitness experts in her field. As a master personal trainer and business coach, having worked with a range of clients from moms, dads, kids, A-list celebrities, pro athletes, Academy Award winners, rock stars, and even pop stars. Having accrued over 50,000 hours in the fitness industry, Borden attributes her unique approach to fitness and coaching to having transformed her own personal struggles with multiple eating disorders into positive philosophies, dynamic training systems, and successful business coaching. In today's podcast, we cover so much from her restrictive upbringing around food and her 12-step recovery from various eating disorders to her eventual move to LA and her evolution as a trainer. Nothing is off limits in today's talk. We discuss Lizzo, parenting, our chihuahuas, narcissists, and how our own relationships with food has evolved over the years. When you're done, send me a message and let me know what you thought of today's episode. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to another episode of Cravings Control for Fat Loss. My name is Laura Cavallo, and we have a very special guest, and in which I am now starstruck because I have just learned how accomplished this amazing woman is. Ashley Borden is on the podcast. Welcome in.
Hi, Laura. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I have to say, I've been so attracted to your energy in our business group, and, our last mastermind, we sat next to each other, and I was like, she needs to talk. She needs to share her story with the world, with the Cravings Control for Fat Loss world. And I really appreciated you opening up. And then, over the last couple of days and weeks doing research in preparation for our call, I'm like, oh shit, she's been doing shit for a real long time.
Mommy's been at it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. But also really accomplished and have done a lot of things. And I think it's so cool that kind of full circle where you are now in terms of your pull-up protocol, your squat protocol, staying true to the foundations and the basics of stuff, right? And I'm excited to talk to you about your experience in Hollywood and writing a book and being published and how that kind of compares to maybe where you are now. And I don't know if you're doing still any of those things now, but kind of curious to hear more about your evolution. So thanks for being on.
Of course. I love all your questions that you sent ahead of time to talk about. I'm like, I could talk about anything. I don't care. So, yeah. But I love it. I love that. And I really liked, we're in Legacy, we're in a business group together. And I really, the first time when I met you, I was like, oh, she's my kind of person. And then when we did sit next to each other, started talking about everything, I think that's what's so cool is that when you meet other women in business, it's like, oh, it's so supportive. And it's so nice to have people who are like-minded, who are also female and driven and focused with this. And it really doesn't matter. That's what's nice about it is all levels of people bring value to business, whether you've been doing it like myself for over 30 years or I don't know, how long have you been in business?
I will have been in fitness for about 10 years in September. We'll be 10 years.
That's a decade. That's significant.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I had I realized that I've been doing it for a while. I've just been basically working with horse blinders on and a feed bag for many years. You know what I mean? I was just in the gym working with the horse blinders on, and I was on the airplane and I was reading Outliers. I think I was reading the book Outliers, and it was saying, add up the amount of hours that you've been working to see if you're an expert. And I was like, well, let me add up my hours. And at the time when I added up my hours back then, it was 35,000 hours that I had been, training people. And then now it's probably over 55,000 hours,
wow.
But it actually changed my whole life when I did that, because I had never stopped to take a second to be like, oh, wow, I've actually been really digging in and working for a long period of time, because it's always usually the next thing, the next. That's me. I'm like, get that done. Okay, next. Get that done. Okay, next.
Yes.
I mean, so it's I think when you say you've been working for 10 years, it's like, that is an incredibly long period of time, especially in our business. You know what I mean? In a business of fitness and health and doing that, that's significant.
Yeah. And to your point, as women that keep moving on to the next thing and next thing, we don't stop to recognize our accomplishments and be like, oh, wow, this has been incredible. I did learn so much, and I am where I hoped I would be 10 years ago, or I am where I hoped I would be 20 or 30 years ago. And we don't give ourselves that recognition. It's like, well, there's all these people over here doing all this stuff that I haven't done yet. So I need to go there. I need to do that.
Right. And then you end up, let me speak about myself too. I mean, that's very much, I think there's like a difference between, you do something. We just had Lisa Maximus and I, who was my partner with all of our pull-up protocol, squat protocol, all the protocols. We launched a really intensive group for a 16-week transformation group called Elite. And, we know how launches are. But even with that, it was one of the most successful launches we've done and doing all, but I need to stop for a second and be like, wow, you know what? That's great, Ashley. You did a really good job. I mean, because I end up looking at things and I'm like, okay, great. So what are we going to do next time? Right. I'm like, you just worked on this for 5 months. I mean, or what, we were, doing this stuff and you just don't take a moment. And then you don't feel satisfaction. Hello, cravings. So it's like being satisfied. It's not that you're complacent, but like you need to acknowledge your own stuff, and then you can look at it and be like, okay, what could I do to make it better? How could we improve on this? And but I do that all the time. I do that. I'm a maniac though. I love creating. So like we were in our group and they were like, stop creating things every 5 seconds. I love creating. I'm just getting better at nurturing the things that I create to make them even better, You know what I mean? I think that's what we need to do.
Hey there, boo. I'm giving away a $50 gift card to one lucky winner. To enter the drawing, all you have to do is submit a review of this podcast. Your honest review will help me get in front of other women who may be struggling and need a realistic and sustainable approach to their cravings and fat loss goals. Here's what you have to do. If you're a Spotify listener, click the 3 dots next to the follow button and under the cover photo and click rate the show. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, go to the homepage of the podcast and scroll down past the episodes and past ratings and reviews, and you'll find a purple text saying write a review. After you write your review, take a screenshot of it and send it over to me so that I know it's you and I can put you into the drawing for the $50 gift card. I will be taking submissions all the way through end of July, and then I will be drawing that winner and announcing it on the August 3rd podcast. Your review truly means the world to me. Thank you so much for taking 2 minutes of your time. It really means so, so much. It sounds like you've been mostly in training, fitness, and exercise for most of your career. It doesn't sound like you dabbled really in nutrition as much. But again, I'm going to learn all about that. I mean, I saw a couple of your books and all that. So let's start from the beginning. I know that you were born in DC and then you grew up in Chicago. And tell me about your upbringing and how you were influenced by the people around you in terms of nutrition, fitness, movement. Was it a part of your life growing up?
Yes, I grew up in a very active, I was born in 71, right? So when the 80s, where it wasn't as popular, fitness and health and all that stuff in the 80s. And I literally grew up in a health food store. My mother owned a health food store called Borden's Vitamin B. And I literally grew up in it. So I resented the smell of vitamins for many years. And I resented carob. Okay, here's what I resent to this day still. I resent carob. You can fuck off with carob. Who eats carob? Who?
People
no, they
that
don't.
Own health food
no,
stores.
They don't. They don't like it. And you know what? You're a liar. You do not like carob. Okay, so it is cruel. I think carob, we could do a whole thing on carob. I think carob is a cruel joke. Because I remember when I was little, I was like, oh my God, we have chocolate? And I would take a bite of it. It was disgusting carob. Okay, anyway. Carob sprouts can fuck off as well. I hate sprouts. And then the other thing was we weren't allowed to have ice cream or anything. So instead, she would be like, guess what we have? And then she'd have like this she'd like take the frozen bananas out of the freezer. She's like, I'm going to squish these through this thing and make frozen banana swirl that you can eat instead of ice cream. You know, we were like, this is terrible. So I grew up in this environment of health food, and my father owned sporting goods stores, and he brought the first triathlon to Chicago, and Carol, my mother, was a runner. But you know what, Laura? None of this stuff was explained to me. Nothing was explained about why don't we eat sugar in this house? Why can't I have a normal piece of chocolate? Why? So when I was very young, it was very restrictive. It was like, no, you are not allowed. I was not allowed to have sugar. I was not allowed to have anything bad. So when you're a kid and you're not explained why or explain the whole thing about it, something that becomes bad becomes the only thing you want. So that was the seed of me also sneaking food and hiding food and going to Debbie Coleman's house. I was at Debbie Coleman's house all the time because she had bologna and white bread, Laura. Okay. That's all I wanted was like ho-hos, but you know, bologna. I wanted some white bread instead of my 20 grain sandwich bread with natural peanut butter and jelly. That was disgusting. So anyway, I grew up in all of that. I grew up around athletics. My dad was very into weightlifting. So as a child, I was introduced to the Olympia, Mr. Olympia, and I was introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Frank Zane and Franco Columbu and Rachel McLish, who was like the first female fitness person who I was like, oh my God. But I didn't know anything. And so my dad just like was like, here, look at this book. And then it was like, here's some weights. Like no one ever really explained anything to me. You know what I mean? So that's why I am such an incredible cure. That is why I like to help people not feel that they are an asshole because they don't know something. Somebody just hasn't explained it to them yet. And that is the basis of how I operate. I'm like, you're not a jerk because you don't know what you're doing or a dummy. You just don't know because no one's explained it to you. And I will.
And no one asked you when you were a kid, do you want to exercise? Do you want to go for a run? Or did they?
Well, I mean, I was a dancer. So I grew up dancing and acting. I loved it. I was a dancer. I was not athletic. I was a dancer, even though it is athletic being a dancer, but being a dancer does not support athletic movement patterns. Okay. It doesn't support running pattern. You know, when your feet are turned out like a duck and you try to run, you feel like, what, I can't move. And that was me. So it was like, there was all these things of like, in my family, being athletic was better. It kind of, the way I grew up, it was kind of like, my brother was very athletic. So, you know, and he played sports and he ran and he did all those things. I was like just a dancer. Do you know what I mean? So, and my dad, my dad died when I was my dad died when I was 13. So, and my parents were divorced when I was 8. So it was like growing up with that. My brother was the one who really got a lot of attention and positive reinforcement and stuff for being athletic. It just was very different. I mean, we could just get in a whole psychological thing with family dynamic, but it was very different, you know? So that's why I love to support and coach people and do that. And I'm so good at it because it's always giving people the thing, you know, you don't have. That's generally why people are good in their business is they're giving people the thing that they've always needed. So that's a big part of how I operate, you know?
So was it your dad that inspired you to get into weightlifting and strength training and become a trainer?
So because I was so young, I didn't know. I mean, I was, you know, he died when I was 13, right? So, I mean, I was just basically just trying to live, you know, but I was always around it. So it wasn't like no one ever had a discussion with me. We're like, what do you want to do with your life? I always knew. I was always the one that's like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I was basically like a lone wolf always. And like very, like I was like, I'm going to do this. That's what I'm going to do. I never was like, what is everyone else doing? I just was like, this is what I want to do. I mean, yes, being around them, I think is it probably because I grew up with it. You know what I mean? That's all I was around. I wasn't around people who didn't work out. You know, like Carol, my mother, was a runner. I mean, I always say to the universe, I'm grateful that I can run. I don't enjoy it. It's not my modality of fun. I grew up in a family of runners. No one ever took the time to teach me how to run. Like, here's the thing, Laura. I would run a block, get a stitch in my side and want to cry. And everyone would be, leaving or running backwards, talking to me like, come on, Ashley, and I'd be like, forget it, I'm going home. And no one ever taught me how to run. So it wasn't until I was in my, I think 30s, I hired a running coach to teach me how to run. It was the first time I ran 7 miles on a treadmill, and it was awful. And I hated every fucking minute of it, but I did it. And then I retired my running skills. But
that's it.
That's what I mean. I feel like it wasn't taught to me. There was a lot of, it wasn't taught to me. So that's why I think I love teaching, is because there was all this expectation, and I did a lot of this stuff. I'm super active. I mean, it's just the way we grew up in my family. We went to marathon, my mother would be in marathons. We would go watch, I would go to her running practice. My dad would go to I was a dancer on scholarship. I was going to the gym. I was, not because of my body or weight or eating disorder stuff until I was in, high school.
And so when you were growing up, middle school, high school, did you know that the way that you were being taught to eat, or the restriction that was happening, did you know that was unhealthy, or did you just take that as face value? Like, this is normal.
Like, I wasn't like, I wonder how the rest of the world is eating, and I'm at home eating carob. Like, I was just more angry, pissed off that I had to eat this food. Like, in our house, it was like, I just couldn't wait to go to other people's house. Laura, it was like, I would go to my friends' houses who would have candy drawers. Julie Ordauer had the best candy drawer I'd ever seen. I was like, well, hold on a minute. You keep this candy in your house, like, all the time? And she's like, yeah, I don't, like, it was the first time I realized that when something's there, it doesn't become this thing, right? Because, to me, if the candy was in the house, I'd want to eat every single bit of it, because that would be the last time I'd ever see it again.
Right.
So I would hide it. I'd hide food. This was the beginning of my behaviors of disordered eating. You know what I mean? Hiding food, sneaking, all of this stuff. But I think that because my dad died so young, I never questioned how somebody was raising me. Do you know what I mean? Like, because Carol was my only, that was it. It was my only parent that I had. So I didn't question what she was doing. You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, she could do no wrong. She's my mom, but
totally,
that's not the case. And, so it wasn't until I was like Julie Ordauer's house, and I was like, wait, she has I can still smell it, her candy drawer. I remember where it was in her house, and I was floored that they had one. So even to this day, I have candy, like, it'll be like either in like a Tupperware or something that it just says candy on it, and it has all the different kinds of candy in it for me. That makes me so happy. And I always have a little baby thing of candy in it. It says candy, and it's like, I don't know, it's something that I like jelly beans in it or whatever I want to have, but I don't binge on it, because nothing is off limits for me. But we're skipping a whole section of my eating disorder, and then went to treatment and did all this stuff. And like, I've been hardcore program for years, but so yeah. So I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on restricting kids with food and not explaining it to them and not having balance. And did you have balance growing up with your food?
It's interesting, because when I think of balance, I think about eating things in moderation, not necessarily restricting. There's no good, there's no bad. And we didn't have good or bad foods, but foods wasn't really talked about in that way in my family. But there was this culture of overeating, especially as an Italian household. A lot of things revolve around food and cooking and the household and the moms and grandmas cooking and everything just being delicious and celebratory and fresh and amazing.
Can you adopt me?
Yeah, come on over.
Yeah,
come on over.
Sounds great.
But when you're in that culture, and I know a lot of Latino cultures are similar, it's like there's this element of, overeating, where you are eating until you are unbuttoning your pants, right, at the dinner table. And if you haven't unbuttoned your pants, you have not eaten enough. And if you haven't finished everything on your plate, then you're going to offend the chef. And if you offend the chef, then they're going to be upset for the next 30 years, and they're not going to talk to you like that.
And by the way, in a Jewish family, normally in a Jewish, my family's Jewish, it normally is like that. But I had a mother that her mantra was, I hate cooking. So that's what we grew up hearing all the time is, I hate cooking. I hate cooking. I hate cooking. I'm like, great. This is delicious.
Yeah. Can't wait.
Like made with hate. So it's like, you don't want to cook like that. But anyway, yes, it's interesting.
So similar. Yeah. So we kind of grew up a little bit on not opposite ends, but we had our own disordered eating within the house. And so I was sneaking, sweets at night. Like we had like 10 different cereals. I would sneak cereal. I would sneak cookies.
Me too.
My snack was like Italian bread with butter and a mound of sugar on it. And it was like constant snacking, late night eating, and overeating. And so there'd be periods where I was at the dinner table where I was forced to finish food, where it would be 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and I would still be sitting there with food on my plate.
I had that with oatmeal once. She made me sit there and finish. I was labeled a picky eater, and I was told I had to sit there and finish my oatmeal. And then one time she shoved string beans down my throat as well because I refused to eat them.
Yeah. And those things stick with us, as young adults. And I think our parents just did the best they could. Like, I really truly believe that most people are.
Let's talk about that. We could talk about that. Let's talk about that sentence, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that every single parent, just because you're a parent, you're doing the best you can. I do not believe that. I believe that just because you give birth to children doesn't all of a sudden make this assumption that you're doing the best you can because you're now a parent. I mean, like, there's some terrible parents in the world who actually don't do a fourth of what they should be doing as parents. So I hate that. To be honest, I really dislike that sentence when people are like, parents are just doing the best they can. I mean, some are 100%. I think some are, probably most, I don't know, are trying, I guess, you know what I mean? But there are some, I've worked with some people where there are some incredibly neglectful, abusive, mentally abusive, not great parents, and I know my own parent is not doing the best they can with me, and so I don't know. It's a whole subject about it. I didn't mean to cut you off with that, but I don't believe that, because here's the thing. People say about parents, they're like, they grew up in, I mean, my parents' generation, I mean, like they weren't exposed to therapy. I'm like, hold on a second. Hold on. If you grew up in the sticks of like, in the middle of the backwoods somewhere where you were in a cabin with no running water and you were around nobody for miles except for cows and you were not exposed to any type of therapy. Okay. I understand that. But like parents and people who grew up in like normal cities, went to universities, have been around for a long time. It's 2023. They're on the internet. They understand what's going on. Like that to me is also I don't know. It's a whole thing. That to me is an excuse that a lot of parents use to be like, look, it's just the way that we are. It's like, well, this is the way that I am. You know what I mean?
I agree with you that I guess when I say that, I think of my family, that everyone truly did try and do the best that they could with what they were given, and I know a little bit about your family history and what you went through. And I think you can confidently say my mom did not do the best that she could. Right.
So here's the thing, right? When I mean, this is a whole, I'm obsessed with narcissism. This is a whole thing, right? I come from like my mother's a covert narcissist. So it's a whole different, fascinating world of narcissism. This is like my second job that I'm obsessed with. So it's not in her capacity. I don't even think it's like, it's not like I really don't think it is in her capacity at all. So it's not that I'm like, oh, you just can't do it. It's like, okay, well, I have my boundaries. She has her inability, and my mental health is important. I have, had lots of therapy and stuff like that. So, boundaries are incredibly healing, and boundaries are really important, for people. And I think there's a big stigma with people talking about parents and like if they have boundaries or like, I don't know, people are very uncomfortable talking about that. There's a lot of guilt around people because there's so much, I don't know. I don't operate out of guilt. So I don't have any guilt with that. I'm not tied in this guilty way with it,
What I will say is that I think our generation is a little bit more inclined towards that self-development and that internal work, whereas the previous generations, like I know everyone in my family, my mom, my aunts, my grandparents, they did not talk about anything.
Right.
It was very much behind shut yourself down, shut yourself off, don't show emotion. If you do, you get in trouble for that. And so I know that the earlier generations, or the older generations rather, before us, they did not know necessarily how to process things or how to talk about things. And so I think that also impacted their ability to deal be parents and be in healthy relationships, XYZ. Again, that doesn't serve as an excuse for anyone that's a narcissist or has anything.
But absolutely. And by the way, even narcissism, right? You can work past that, although it's hard.
Yes.
If you're hardcore, you don't have the self-reflectiveness. So it doesn't work, right? If you're a hardcore narcissist, you don't even have the thought to self-reflect because the defense is so hardcore in your mind. You can't self-reflect. As an empath, you know, and when this whole subject is one of my favorite, it's absolutely fascinating to me.
I have a couple friends recovering from narcissistic relationships, and I didn't realize how like prevalent it was amongst people.
Yeah.
And how prevalent it is out there. And I don't really know how to look for it or anything like that. But yeah, I think that could be a topic for a whole
other thing. But I do feel that as you get older with food and all this stuff, you know, it's like how we grew up doesn't necessarily have to be the way that we operate in the world with food or however it is. Like we have the ability to shift these things like you're doing with craving coaching and all that. It's like there's people out there that can help shift these things and make them more healthy. And I really am a believer that you can create the nucleus of people that you need to support you. Like if you don't have parents that are the right kind of support, or you don't feel like you're getting it from there. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, that's a whole thing. You talk to your therapist, it's sad, but you can also I have created such incredible network of people that are like my parents. Do you know what I mean? That are like, you know, I say like my finance dad is Ramit, right? Ramit, who does, you know, his book that I just got, I think it's called, I Will Teach You to Be Rich or something. Shantae had brought up. I love his stuff. And, you know, haven't had a dad forever, and I don't have any guidance from anybody in my life. Right. So I decided, I was like, I love his stuff so much that he is my finance dad. So whatever my finance dad tells me to do, that's what I'm doing. You know what I mean? He's my finance dad. So, you know,
I like that.
Yeah. It's like you find the people that can give you great guidance, you know, it's important.
So you talked about your childhood, and then you talked a little bit about where you're at now in terms of your nutrition, and we jumped a couple steps, right, as you said. So tell me how growing up in that environment impacted you as you got into your 20s and 30s, and what that looked like for you in the way of nutrition and movement and body image.
So I hit bottom with my eating disorders and mentally and all that when I was 18. So I went into treatment at 18 into a 12-step treatment center in Chicago called Parkside. And I was there it was about a month and a half. And then I was introduced to a 12-step program from that. Right. Wow. And, wow. But it was funny because when I started in there, I was like, oh no, I am not, you guys, I'm sorry. I am not as crazy and sick as all you people. You know what I mean? They're like, keep coming back, Ashley. But that is the basis. That's when it started when I was 18. So I feel very blessed that I have so much healing experience from such a young age. I mean, most people don't hit bottom so young, you know, I mean, I was suicidal and done at 18. I was like, I can't, I had such a raging eating disorder for so many years. And I graduated high school and I was like, could barely function. And so when I went into treatment, that just started everything. I mean, I got out of treatment and I was like, that was kind of like, oh, these are my parents to guide me with my eating disorder stuff now. It was like, you know, I had a sponsor and I was going to meetings all the time. And I just wanted to get better. Yeah. And so I really worked super hard on my recovery forever. I still love the program. You know, my logo is the 12 bumps that go around the circle is the 12-step program.
Oh, I love that.
So it's very much the basis of, you know, keeping my side of the street clean, the basis of the 12-step program with my stuff in OA and Overeaters Anonymous, which is all eating disorders. It's not just overeating. You know, my eating disorders were bulimia, compulsive overeating, compulsive exercise, compulsive everything, you name it, you know. And I used to think I was so terminally unique. I'm like, oh no, you guys don't know. You don't know. I am really fucked up, you know, and I just, you know, I was as difficult as it could be. And the fact that I came out of it on the other side and I'm able to do it. This is why I'm so good at working with people, because I'm like, most people assume a lot of things about me, fitness people, or about me, or like, they're like, oh, this bitch has never had a minute of struggle in her life, So it's like, you don't want to, you can't judge a book by its cover because you have no idea.
Right.
And with disordered eating or eating disorders, it's not you don't identify it by what somebody looks like. I mean, unfortunately, if you're obese, your disorder, if that's the case, is from you walking around with it. I didn't walk around with my toilet, like at my side and like go to a restaurant, put my toilet down next to me, and then people would, see all this. So it's a little bit more insidious when it's not so obvious, but you can recover from that. I mean, there's, you have to put in the work, but that's really the basis of everything. So that's my business, right? My company, my everything, my brand has always been around giving back the things that I didn't have. And I feel when I talk to somebody immediately, I can feel what is going on immediately,
Wow.
I can see it in their body, when the way they walk. So it's just, it's just an intuitiveness.
Yeah, it's a powerful gift. I like that you said, I am still working the program, right? I am still working the steps. And this is, 30 years later. And huge kudos to you for moving to LA at 20, right? Right after treatment, in the middle of treatment, the beginning stages of your treatment. So I'm curious to hear about your experience being in one of the most aesthetically driven cities and how you were able to stay true to the work and accept yourself, accept your body, accept your process when there was, I mean, I know I lived in LA for 7 years, and the pressure that I just put on myself, not even anyone else that put on me. So how was those first few years moving to LA? How did you know that you were going to get into fitness, and what was that like for you?
My extended family, they are from California. So like my grandmother had lived here, my uncle, like they all, so we once in a while would like come out here, but I didn't know LA. You know what I mean? It was just like we would go visit grandma at her beautiful house, and then and then she got divorced and doesn't have a house. So when I moved here, they say ignorance is bliss. You know what I mean? Like I was like, this is also before the internet, right? So I moved here, I drove out here with my mother. We drove here. And then I lived with my cousin actually the first 6 months that I lived here. We moved into an apartment together, and I just wasn't aware, it wasn't like I was like, oh my God, I'm going to LA. Because California, LA, to me when I was little was like, oh, it's where the rest of my family is. So I didn't really think like, oh, I'm moving across country and I'm moving away. I actually did not even, I don't know. I never was scared. I was never like, oh my God, this is such a big thing. So I moved here and I was working. I was always in fitness, but I was like doing a receptionist job when I first moved here to have a job. I always say that it's kind of like, the pinball where you're like, oh, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do this over here. That's kind of like how I started when I was here. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do that. I didn't really have a lot of structure in the beginning of what I was doing. You say like, how did I handle it? I mean, I was in my 20s too. So I was just, my issue, because I had 12-step program behind me, that is my solid background, right? So because my side of the street always needed to be clean is why I did not end up in the sex trade as a stripper or doing whatever, something that would make me, something that it would not be in alignment with what I'd be doing, right? Because, and again, I'm not disparaging people who want to do that. I'm just saying for me, it would have not been the right move. And I knew I wouldn't do something that was going to compromise my integrity in that way because I had program behind me, and so it was just, I lived in a $500 apartment in the worst in Hollywood. I didn't know anything. You know what I mean? I was just like, I didn't know. And so I lived there and it was so gross. And then I had different goals. Then I started setting goals. I was like, I want to move to Brentwood. And then I was dating a guy who their families were God families with Nicole Brown Simpson. And during this time, all of a sudden, I remember I was like, oh my God. Anyway, I saw the OJ Simpson thing happen. So I had just kind of been living here and then was thrown into that with this family where I went to his funeral. I went to Nicole's funeral, and like, it was the most insane exposure to this world of LA that I had never been exposed to. And it was so bizarre and awful. And so I lived in Brentwood, and then there's this weird connection. So I lived in Brentwood, and then, you know, just was kept on training and I didn't know what I was doing, Laura. How I got my clients was like, I would go to the gym at the time and wear a half shirt at Gold's, and I only trained women. So men, I would not train. Any woman who came up to me and was like, how did you get your abs like that? I would be like, tell them. And then we'd start working together. Like I had no plan, you know? So that's how it started. In the beginning, it was very haphazard, but I knew what I wanted. And that's what I always go by. Like, I'm like, I know what I want. I didn't have a plan, but I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go do that. And so, you know, how I learned was, I always say, kind of like in the prison yard, you know, like I learned all the hard way of like on the yard of like, oh, this is how we actually run clients. Oh, this is how you get clients. Oh, this can be a business. Like as I was training at this gym, I dated another guy who was a trainer, and Roy, and he was like, you know, Ashley, I have people pay me 10 sessions up front. I was like, what? He was like, yeah, they give me 10 sessions up front. I was like, are you joking? And he was like, and then this other trainer was like, I charge $120 $90 a session he charged. I was like, wait, people pay you $90 a session? I couldn't believe what I was hearing at the time. And this was like in my 20s, you know, cut to today, you know, charge double that. But I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like that, I kind of just stumbled my way through learning. And then I'd find people who I liked what they did, and I would, you know, emulate them, or I would ask them questions and do that. And I just kept on doing the things that were my strength.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with training, in that you can pass the certification and, you know, pass the test, but at the end of the day, you're learning hands-on with people, right? And you're learning how to deal with people, how to work with different people, who needs what in terms of training, right? And that's how you get most of your experience,
yes,
right?
You have to be hands-on. You cannot be, I don't know how to emphasize, first of all, you cannot be a trainer or effective trainer and only train yourself. You're not a trainer. You're working out yourself. You can't program for the general public if you've never had your hands on the general public. You have to work with people.
Yeah. And to that, I would even say people in person to a certain extent. I think with COVID, a lot of people started their business online, and I think it limits you in a lot of ways, right? It limits you. And I would encourage anyone that's listening to definitely try and get some hands-on experience with people in your community. And so during these beginning stages, how did you get from these beginning stages, kind of ping-ponging, figuring it out as you go, to being a published author, showing up on TV, getting celebrity clients? How did you make that transition or that leap into sort of this master level trainer?
So there is a website, just kidding. Everyone thinks there's a website that you go to and they just deliver celebrities to people. There's not. First, it's because I live in LA. Okay. Like if I was in Delaware, I probably wouldn't have the same opportunities, just because it's just the entertainment industry is not there that it is in Los Angeles. Right. The number one thing I would tell people about how do I get clients is because I am a nice, friendly person in general with business, right? When you work around other people and you're an asshole, guess what? That's your reputation. People are like, oh wait, Laura? Oh no, Laura's an asshole at work, you know, or whatever it would be like, you know what I mean? Or Laura? Oh yeah, Laura's so friendly. And people overestimate or underestimate the power of your presence and how you are around other people, because that's what people are remembering, right? So I say this story because this was life changing, but this was so important, right? I used to work at a gym where there was a guy, I freaking wish I remembered his name. He was so nice, but he was a big, muscular New York guy. I think he was Italian too. He's big and muscular bodybuilder. And this was at a gym where there weren't bodybuilders at this gym. This was like a bunch of like moms that were like, you know, just like doing like little workouts and stuff at the time. And people would, I remember other trainers there they would just talk shit about him in a way because he was different or whatever. I don't remember, but I was always friendly with him and he was always really nice to me. And we always said hi. And then one day he came up to me and he said, oh, by the way, my client that I train, I don't train him here. I train him at his house. He's looking for a trainer for his client. Could you come and do an interview? Would you want to come and do an interview for him? And I was like, sure. He's like, yeah, it's for an in-home client. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So I went and I sat down. I was like, what's his name? He's like, his name's Irving Azoff. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. I didn't know who Irving was at the time. And I went and met with him and he was like, okay, so my client, is looking for a trainer. We're going to be traveling. I need you to travel, blah, blah, blah. And it was Christina Aguilera's manager. Right. And so then they hired me and they hired me for Christina and I started training. I trained Christina for almost 4 years. Right.
Wow.
But the point of that is that I would never have met Irving if I was the only reason that this guy had me go meet with them at the time was because I was at the gym where he knew me. He saw me. I was a okay trainer, I guess. But I was friendly with him and he was like, oh, you know what? Let me think of Ashley. She might be good. Mm-hmm. And that's how it works. Do you know what I mean? Like in our business, in the industry of Hollywood, most of everything is word of mouth. So if you have a bad reputation, that will follow you around. And that is your reputation. If you are late, if you're a liar, if you steal, if you're unreliable, if you're a heavy drinker when you're working with these people, all those reputations of things and how people refer to it, you know? So that was like my very, very first, that was a big door opening for me. I'm so grateful to Christina because I learned so much training her. And she was probably like the biggest point of her stardom of career. This is during Strip Justified tour when she was on tour with Justin Timberlake and all that. We toured everywhere. But anyway, the point is that it just taught me so much because I had to self-regulate. Nobody teaches you. This is the thing I want to tell people. There is no class to teach you how to work in this environment. There is no class to teach you how to self-regulate around people who are upper level people and you have groups of people that you're working with in a team. So yeah, you are thrown into it immediately. And if you can't self-regulate and you can't get on it and pick it up quickly, you need to be thinking ahead. You can't be the one that's waiting for everybody to tell you what to do, you know, and you need to, and I always say I did a post where I said, are you an asset or an asshole? Because when you work in high level environments with groups of people, you have to be an asset. If you are not an asset, you are the first one to go. And so I'll give you a really quick example of that. You know, like I said, there's no explanation of anything, right? So you're with these groups of people, we're traveling, and Christina travels private on her private plane, right? And there's no telling you where you sit. Like there's no like a seating assignment, right? But there is a seating assignment. And there is a seating assignment. But no one tells you anything, right? So we're all getting on the plane. And it's like this, I'd never traveled with them yet before. And so it was like, oh no, you don't sit there. I'm like, oh my God, where do I sit? And then they're like, no, you wait till Christina sits. And then it was like this whole thing. So then, Christina sat and then, of course, cause I'm also doing body work and massage. So then I was like, okay, I sit close to her so I can help her. But it was just this whole world of like, I need to really be aware and like see what's going on. So I'm not an asshole, but also so I can be helpful. And it's a whole thing, and
yeah.
There is a reason why there's only few of the same people that keep on working over and over again with these level of people, because you need to be able to step up to be in control of what's going on. And it changes all the time. And there's so many people working with them. And if you are a person that is envious, like, if you are a trainer that is like, God, I just wish I was the one who was that person. It's like everybody can smell it. I mean, I can't even describe it. It's like everybody can smell it. So just being yourself, being authentic, helpful. It's the same thing. To me, it doesn't matter if it's Christina or if it was Mary down the street. Same level of service from me. Same person. Nothing changes. I'm not different because it's a celebrity or not. It doesn't matter.
And so after these 4 years of working with Christina, I guess tell me about your evolution as a trainer. So were you like, I'm hardcore dumbbells, or I'm hardcore barbell, or I love Olympic lifting, or I love, the BOSU and the TRX, right? How did your training evolve from these early years to what you're doing now?
Such a good question, Laura. Okay, I've never been asked that question.
I'm working on my interview
I like your interview skills. Girl, that's a good one. I like it. I have to be honest. I keep on saying, I always wanted to do a thing on what did you learn from your boyfriends? Because even though I had the shittiest boyfriends before, except for my partner now, I've learned more valuable things from these exes than and I had never been into heavy strength training. Like, I was a dancer. To be very honest, I had no fucking clue what I was doing for the first 10 years of training. How was I even working? I don't know what. I was just training people the way I trained myself, at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I had an old boyfriend that was a strength and conditioning coach. And I was working with his clients, fixing their form, because I used to be very I still am, but I was only really just focused on like tiny movement changes and not overall big muscle gains and stuff like that. And so I would help him with his clients. And then he was teaching me about exertion and about intensity. And I was like, oh, I have none. I was like, oh I have none. And then it wasn't until about, I don't know how many years ago, it was probably in my I'm 52 now. So it was probably in my late 30s. I was introduced to barbell work. I was not introduced until then, and at my gym, and I was like, "What is this?" Because CrossFit was it my 30s? It was whenever CrossFit was coming out, and in my gym, everyone was like doing CrossFit. I was like, "This is terrible.
Right?
This is so dangerous." I was like, "This is I was just a big shit talker about it." And then I hired somebody to teach me how to work with a barbell. Hello, people. This is how you do it. And then I started working with the barbell, and I hired my first coach. And I've had many coaches, but my first coach to work with a barbell, Brian Redfern. And that changed everything. I was like, oh my God, what is going on with my body? My whole life I've been like, I want a 6-pack. And I used to do lots of crunches, but it was like, oh my God, my hormone release from this heavier strength training. And how do I have this crazy 6-pack now? And so I changed the way that I was training to focus just more on function and not at all about my aesthetics. And that changed around in my late 30s with start incorporating barbell stuff and way heavier strength training and understanding it. And then in my early 40s, I was like, I wanted to start getting into jiu-jitsu. I've always been into martial arts, and I used to catch with boxing for years. Don't ask me how that, for years. I would teach boxing and I loved it. And then I wanted to learn jiu-jitsu because I've been obsessed with MMA, forever. So then I started doing, but I don't teach jiu-jitsu. I started taking it.
Yeah. With your boyfriend.
That's how we met.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. And so that's how your fitness changed. Tell us about your nutrition. You got to LA in your 20s. You were training, right? And obviously you were still doing the 12 steps, right? You're in these early stages. And so now what was your evolution like around nutrition and diet? Was there a period where maybe you transitioned to clean eating, or were you susceptible to any of those fad dieting things? Obviously, when you're in the 12 steps, you're learning more towards body acceptance and how to use food in a healthy way to nourish your body.
Well, yeah, yes. But OA is really about what's going on. It's not even about the food.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. OA has, okay. So just like AA, right? In AA, you don't drink or take anything that affects you from the neck up, right? That's their thing, right? That you're sober. If you are in OA, the sobriety is no binging or purging, eating white flour or sugar. Okay. So the first year of my recovery, I did not have any sugar or white flour for a full year. Okay. And because that was their idea, that's the trigger, right? The sugar, white flour, refined white flour and sugar is the trigger, right? If you're not eating to get your food back on track. So I had to commit. So just moving back for a second, when I got out of treatment and doing this, I didn't know how to eat. Like, I can't describe it. Like, I was either starving or I was full. And I didn't have the button of I'm hungry, I'm full. It was dead in me. I didn't have that button anymore. So I didn't know. And so I would look at food and didn't understand, like, my body didn't understand if I was hungry or full. So I still had issues with my eating. But when I got into recovery, part of the recovery was I had a food sponsor. So my food sponsor, my recovery was I had to commit 3 meals and 3 snacks a day to my food sponsor. So literally I would call her and I'm like, hi, Mary? Because we weren't internet, right? And I'm like, I'm going to have a piece of toast. So I had to commit my food. I did this every day for 6 months. Okay. Wow. Every meal, every day, because she told me if I did that, it would move me through my recovery. So I was so desperate to be healthy in my head that I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I did that, right? My SOS food plan, Laura, that I sell now, that I have, it's the SOS food plan is the food plan basically that saved my life, right? And it's called satiation of senses. That's what I named it, because when we binge, nobody's binging on colorful, crunchy food, right? People are binging on, or I would binge on food that was the color of cardboard and had no texture to it at all. You know, that's why, like, you know, Chinese food, ice cream, pasta, salad with like lots of thick dressing on it. Like, these things just go down and until you're like, oh my God, I'm 4 months pregnant. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that button, that I'm full, I'm hungry button. So when I started doing this, it brought my button back of like eating food again, eating normal food again. And I mean, there was all the mental stuff with it. I resented a lot of it, but I just like, I don't care. I'm just going to still do it. Cause I had a decision to either change the way I was doing things or want to feel like I wanted to die all the time. And I was done feeling like shit and I wanted to get better. So I did whatever it took. And these people who I looked to for direction, I just, okay, I'll do it. She was like, I have been where you are, but worse. And I'm like, no way. You know, she's like, yeah, way. So this is what I did for my recovery. Anyway, so that's what I did, right? So the food plan that I have was written with, and people also need to know, you legally cannot give out food plans if you are a trainer. You can't do that. You also can't legally suggest supplementation if you're a trainer. You could get sued. I mean, it is a serious thing. You can't give somebody a food plan and say, eat this amount of this if you are not a registered dietitian or you're not a nutritionist or you don't have a legal thing behind you. I mean, as a trainer, you cannot. So when I created my food plan, I created my food plan with an incredible registered dietitian. Her name is Kristen Bell. And so Kristen and I created this together, right? So it had the right nutritional dynamics behind it, but the psychology behind the whole food plan is mine. And so the food plan is not just food that's on it. It's like practical things that can take you out of the food obsession, putting you more into your body when you're eating, like writing down 5 adjectives of how you feel right before you eat. I know it seems like some dumb esoteric thing, but it actually helps to give you a moment of separation before you eat or binge. You know, I mean, most of the time when we binge, who's writing down how we feel? You're closing the door and getting into it, you know? So if you can take that 1 second, these are the things that help me over the course of time become, a more intuitive eater for me. So I guess I would say I am an intuitive eater now. Like, I don't measure my food. I understand it now. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't before. So like hand and fist sizes of things were helpful because it gave me, I'm like, okay. So this is a whole piece of chicken and this thickness. I see. Okay. That helped me with a visual. Like, okay, this is the red meat and this thickness of filet mignon. Oh, okay. I get that. Like, just the visuals of all that helped me to get back into my body and understand how to eat. So I don't do any fad. The minute you tell me, Laura, you're like, okay, you're going to, what's the one that people do? Intermittent fast. I am like, not only am I not an intermittent fast, I am going to binge within the first 5 minutes of you telling me that I can't eat until tomorrow. I mean, what?
Pretty much.
Yeah, not me, not for me, not for me. Can you do that?
No, that's one of the protocols that I tried for a long time. And then it was like, okay, you can't eat till 9 a.m. And I would wake up at 7 and be like, but I want my coffee and I want to just not have to stress about waiting until 9. And then I would stress myself out over this like 2-hour period. And then I would like keep looking at the clock and keep stressing, and then wouldn't have the coffee. And then I would have the coffee and I'd be like, measure my fasting glucose and be like, oh my God, my glucose went up and now I'm out of a fast. And it was just a mind fuck over a cup of coffee.
Look at that. And that's what we start the day off with. And then we're like, okay, now I'm ready to face the day after you're so exhausted from 2 hours of torture.
So exhausted. And at that point, you're like, fuck it. I already messed up my fast. So I'm just going to fuck it, you know?
Do you know, I have a client that she told me that, you know, she's like, look at the thing that just works for me is just like to intermittent fast. It's just what works for me. And I'm like, okay, so what works for you? She's like, it just works for me to just like stop eating at 3. It's just what works for my body. It just like works for my body. And I'm like, just keep saying that more so you can convince yourself that it works for your body.
Right.
Because it doesn't work for your mind. There is not a person on this earth that isn't tortured by the idea, I feel, at 3:00 in the afternoon, like that's it. Right? I mean, isn't it, I don't know, maybe all the intermittent fasters.
Unless you're going to bed at 5 or
I would be going to bed at 3:30.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah. Right. That's it. Until the next day when I go to bed just so I can eat.
That's what I'm saying. So now, yes, there are some people like Adam Bornstein, my friend, who just is incredible writer and overall fitness person. You know, he loves intermittent fasting. He doesn't give me disordered vibes with it either, right? You know what I mean? Like some people, like I feel like they have it down. Some people, it feels like it's a front for disordered eating. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
here's how you know if it works for you. Don't lie to yourself. Like Laura just said, she spent 2 hours of a hostage negotiation in her head. By the way, your cortisol was probably spiked up to here by the time you're ready to have your first cup of coffee because you were so stressed out.
So bad.
You know, I just, whatever I want, I eat it, right? But I also know how certain foods affect me. So like, if we were to go out and let's say my boyfriend was like, let's go get pasta right now in the middle of the afternoon, I'd be like, no. Like if I eat this right now, I am going to, first of all, feel like I'm going to go take a nap because I know how food affects my body. So it's more about how it affects my body and my energy and my mind than it is like, oh, because I don't restrict. So if you don't restrict, the reason why we binge is because we're like, this is the last time, I might as well say goodbye to it. You know what I mean? You're like, well, I'm just going to buy one of every piece of chocolate that's ever been created just so I can say goodbye to it because I'm never having it again after tomorrow. And yeah, you are. Yes, you are. Yeah. You will again after you binge. So when we give ourselves, I feel like more permission to have the food, you know, it's like, for instance, last night, I'll give you an example. Last night we ordered, I can't remember the name of the burger place, but it's some burger place that has like vegetarian hamburgers. So I ordered vegetarian hamburger. I'm not a vegetarian, but whatever, I'm weird. So I had and dude ordered a hamburger and then I ordered fries with it. And then I ordered a piece of key lime pie slice, right? So we got the burger. I had like 2 bites of it. I was like, oh, this is like too salty. It was too gross. And I didn't want it. Then I didn't want the fries because it was so gross, right? I had 1 fry. I was like, this is disgusting. But the key lime pie was delicious. So I was like, all right. So you know what, Ashley? Then I had like a protein shake because now my dinner was fucked
sugar
up.
Blow
Yeah, exactly. Soften
the
sugar blow. I ate like, what do you call it? Spinach and some little salad. Because you know what I'm saying? Because I was like, oh, now I'm fucked up because like my dinner that I didn't have. But these are the things that you have to think about, right? Because if I just have the sugar, I'm going to spike my blood sugar so badly and it's going to fuck me up. But the point of that whole story is that this morning, I felt like shit. This morning, I feel bloated. This morning, my hands feel bloated. My stomach was hurting when I woke up this morning. And guess what? I'm not going to eat that food or that probably for, I don't know, I'm so grossed out by it. I can't even tell you. But I don't feel shameful. I'm not like, oh, it's over for me now.
Right.
Might as well just start binging today. You know what I mean? I don't.
But you've learned from it.
Yeah.
You've learned from it. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing that I found when I was struggling so much with my nutrition was that it was like everything was the end all be all, right? Like, oh, I ate this, it's the end of the world. Or like I'm restricting because I have to lose weight, or, I have to work off this food. And everything was just like, everything meant so much. Everything was so heavy. And now it's just like, well, how does that food make you feel? Oh, it doesn't make you feel great. Then next time you can make adjustments and not have it. Right. Or, this meal helped you feel energized and gave you, like, you were able to like have a really good poop the next morning because there was so much fiber. Like, you're going to keep doing stuff like that. Right. So we really focus more on like curiosity and flexibility and understanding within the cravings code and our programs, and just taking the shame and guilt away, because we have enough shame and guilt that half of us deal with for all of the other shit in our life. Like, don't let it apply to food and your fitness journey.
And you know what? Okay. You're saying something that's so true, which is most of the time, okay, perfect example, like years ago, I was working with a nutritionist where they took my blood. Right. I don't know. Cause I was on a panel. He was like, let me give you a food plan. I was like, no, I'm a recovering person. I don't do diets. And he's like, no, I just want to take your blood and tell you what's going on. And I was like, all right, fine. So he did it. Right. And he's like, and I said to him before we started, I was like, so I just want to let you know something. I'm like, I am a sugar addict. Okay. So I am addicted to sugar, and I just want you to know I'm a recovering person. He's like, okay, let me just take your blood. So he takes my blood. He comes back and he's like, so Ashley, first of all, the reason that you're a sugar person is because you eat zero fat. Okay. You eat no fat. So there's nothing regulating your blood sugar throughout the day at all. And I was like, oh my God, what? And then I'm like, I don't really eat that much sugar. And he's like, oh, tell me what you eat for breakfast. I'm like, okay. So I have, at the time, I was like, I have oatmeal. He's like, oh, what do you put in the oatmeal? I'm like, brown sugar and bananas, I think, or something. He's like, okay, what else? I'm like, I have coffee. And he's like, what do you put in the coffee? I'm like, sugar and half and half. And then I'm like, and then I do a side of fruit. He's like, oh, and you do a side of sugar. I'm like, yeah, that's correct. And he's like, so it was basically like, even though I was still like a nutrition person or fitness person, I was eating like shit. But I just didn't know. I just was like, oh, this is all right. But I was missing key components to my nutrition. So he helped me a lot with understanding that, right? That, oh, if I add the good fat to my food, I'll tell you, I've never done a diet since I got out of OA. I mean, since I've been 18, right? That was the only thing I ever followed for a period of time. It makes me feel crazy. I can't do anything that I'm writing my food down. If you want me to write my food down to tell you what I'm eating, I'm like, no, I don't like to do that. I talk more about behaviors of food and eating, because I feel like, oh, here's my question to you. What do you feel? What are your thoughts on what I eat in a day posts? Talking about food, I'm talking about influencers.
Yeah, I think that if people get ideas about different types of foods or different recipes, or it gives them inspiration to have breakfast or to have lunch or things like that, I think it can be helpful in that respect. But I don't think that everyone that's consuming social media has the appropriate filter to say, oh, this person is eating this. I could eat the same exact thing and I still would not get the same results or look the same as this person or have the same glycemic response as this person. So I think that content creators need to do a better job of saying like, hey, I'm just sharing this to give you ideas, not because you should eat this, because you're not going to necessarily look like me if this is what you eat.
And I don't believe half of what they're putting in there. I'm like, oh, so you start with a poke bowl that you make at home. Is that what's going on? They're like, I have a poke bowl for lunch. You know what I mean? That I make at home. And then I do a whole chicken stir fry and then making this at home. And then they're like, look at this beautiful bowl that I do. I'm just like, first of all, you bought all this food. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I'm like, can we be like,
food.
I'm like, this is my oatmeal with chia seeds and flax. It looks like I just took it and shit it out, but it's like really good. And I'm using a reusable plate. So everyone hates me now because I'm using paper.
That is me too. I'm like, here's my ugly ass plate with my boring food on it that does not look like this. And by the way, it's the same thing all the time. I'm such a creature of habit. So I don't know. I just feel like I laugh at a lot of this is what I eat in a day. Cause I'm like, it's what I eat in a day too when I'm at a hotel and they're delivering my food. And I was like, oh, it's the perfect time for me to do a what I eat in a day post and pretend like I'm at home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to use this photo later.
Yeah. You're like, don't mind the background of this gorgeous background. This is my backyard.
Yeah. I think that's the difference. I mean, I don't see myself as an influencer in the sense of like, I don't have the physique of someone that trains 6 days a week and counts her macros and is 17% body fat, right? I don't spend hours cooking my food. I don't spend time putting my makeup on, doing my hair, and making sure I have the latest outfits. Like I do not feel that is not
you're still,
who I am.
You are
online,
an influencer,
right?
though, in a good way. You're you as an influencer, which I love.
Right. So to your point, like the what I eat in a day post and the people that are like everything is super curated. I think that's what they have to do for their brand, right? I think that's what they have to do for their brand. You and we influence people in different ways. I think we can be posting our nutrition and they can be like, oh, Laura has bread. Cool. Now I feel more comfortable having bread.
Exactly.
You know, like that's the shit I like.
Exactly. I love that. Yes, I do love that. And by the way, I do eat bread. I do. Yeah. There's nothing that I don't know. It's like when you live with, I don't eat this unless you're allergic to it. Like, okay, there is one thing I can't eat because I'll basically shit myself to death and vomit to death is our goji berries. Who knew?
Oh my God.
Who knew I was so deathly allergic? Were
all up in the vitamin shop.
So this is why I also can't buy, there's only one place in LA that I can get like health food stuff. And I love it. It's called Green Table. And Green Table is amazing. It's vegan, but it's delicious and it's so good. And they don't use, I always have to be like, I will die if you have a goji berry in this. So can you just triple check? You know what I mean? Like I will die from that. But I think that's such a good point, right? It's the giving the permission. That's why like in my thing, like I did a post about my eyes. Like I had my eyes done years ago, like 7 years ago or something. And I talk about it and my boobs done years ago, right? But I talk about it because I would have liked to have heard from people who really did it. It's true, you know, or I'm like, yeah, I look good for my age also, but I did have some help. Like I had my eyes done. If you had seen my eyes before, I look like Richard Nixon. Okay. I mean, like I had huge bags under my eyes. I looked so tired and older, you know, and that helped me, my face look younger. I'm like, yeah. And I do get some Botox in there. I don't have any filler in my face today, but you know, I tell people, I'm like, I'm not trying to kid anyone. And if you look at pictures or like, you know, getting your boobs done, I'm like, yeah, I had my boobs done. I don't know how long ago it was, but maybe like 7 years ago. But again, at the same time, like I would talk about it because it's not like I'm trying to kid you. You look at pictures of me in my 20s and 30s and you're like, did she grow her boobs in the last, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
But people don't want to, I don't know why. It's like steroids, you know what I mean? Like you're not kidding anyone. You just talk about it. I don't know.
I've learned a long time ago that when you lie about something, you have to tell more lies to cover up the first lie that you said. And like, this is just stemming from when I was a kid, you know, just like trying to be cool or trying to present myself as something that I wasn't, right? I'd tell one person one thing and then be like, well, you told this person that. And then, and then I'd be like, oh, yeah. And so like, I'm a bad liar. I like need to just be my most transparent person.
Me too.
And so, and hence why I was, you know, connected to you and attracted to you, just because I'm like, this is just real chicks, you know, and we need more of that out there, you know, leading other women and letting them know it's okay, right? You're not going to be perfect.
Yeah. And what is perfect? I mean, there is not one person. I mean, I've worked with every demographic from multi-billionaires to hairdressing assistants to kids to students to huge rock stars and celebrities. Every single person thinks the same way. There's no difference, you know, and we all should just be focusing on being the strongest, best version of ourselves. And if you just focus on being strong, your whole body will change. Like that's literally, if you just focus on being strong and feeding your muscles and doing that, that's it. That's all you need. But if you focus on losing weight, you're fucked. Because your whole life is just focused on losing weight. And then you become obsessed and it's like the wrong, and then you start doing less, right? Eating less. I don't want to live so hard. I want to get bulky. I'm not, 1987, it's like when you focus on being strong, you want to feed your muscles. You're like, oh, I got to have energy for my workout. If you don't do that, you can't do both. You can't be in restriction and then want to weight train. Your body's like, doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Like it doesn't work like that. So science wins, right? Science, I always say science wins. We're not reinventing the wheel. I'm not reinventing the wheel. Like Lisa and I, with our programs that we have that are these 4-week training programs that are goal oriented, meaning like the pull-up protocol, for instance, is 4 weeks, 5 times a week. You will get your first pull-up. If you've never done a pull-up in your life and you are a weak noodle, you will get your first pull-up doing this, right? So to be able to promise that kind of return for it is significant, right? But we've run this program many times. We know it will work. But if you're doing this program thinking that I'm just going to try to lose weight during this, it's like, it doesn't work like that. So you want to feed yourself to hit these goals with getting your pull-ups, because at the end of the 4 weeks, not only are you capable and you feel like a badass because you can do a pull-up, but you look great because you focused on the right things, which are your core, your back, being strong, pulling, like, you know what I'm saying? So that's how, I guess, also in my evolution of training, that's how things have changed too, is explaining about like when my focus is just being strong, I'm like, okay, I want to, do 20 pull-ups again. There was a period of time where I could rep out 20 pull-ups in a row. I was like, who am I? Like, I was like, what? I was such a weak noodle for so long. You know what I mean? So those are the kinds of goals I feel like as women, especially, we need to be having. Functional goals of things like, I want to bench press 100 pounds. I want to squat my body weight. I want to hike this mountain. I want to go on this trip and do this cycling thing for 4 days and feel great while I'm doing it, or have physical goals that are like, rather than, I want my scale to go down by 6 pounds. Like, stop focusing on that. It will. I promise you it'll be faster if you don't focus on that. And also throw your scale away.
Yeah, please.
Can you please throw it in the garbage? And there's only one person who needs to be weighing themselves. And that's if you are in the Olympics and you are doing boxing and you have to weigh yourself, or you're Lisa Maximus, my partner who, competes in powerlifting competitions and weight class divisions. She has to weigh in at a certain weight, right? Other than that, what the fuck are you guys doing? Throw your scale away. Yeah. And by the way, if it is at a point where you're like, well, I have to weigh myself because I'm afraid if I don't weigh myself, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have gained 20 pounds and I won't know it. If that's the case, which is what most people say, the issue is not you weighing yourself every day. The issue is you feeling like you have absolutely no control over what's going on in your life with your food.
Yep.
Right? I mean, the scale is not keeping you wake up in the morning, you get out, you're like, okay, I'm okay today. I'm okay. You get on the scale and you're like, oh God, I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. No. When it dictates your emotions and every action for the rest of the day, that's where the issue is. That's going to be the issue.
Yeah. And so just change your focus of what you're doing and doing stuff like, the craving stuff and stuff where you have practical feedback for food and function and training. You are less crazy, and like when you asked about when I moved to LA, how did I deal with the aesthetics of it? I'm not a fitness model. I'm not modeling. I'm not like, I did that in Chicago, like as an asshole when I was younger, but I hated it. Actually when I moved here, I was doing stand-up comedy, to be honest. I'd taken,
oh, shut up.
Yeah. I was like, when I moved here, my skin was when I moved here, my skin broke out so badly, Laura. I had such cystic acne when I moved here that I couldn't do anything fitness wise. I looked so horrible in my skin. So I joined this group to learn how to do stand-up comedy. And I also learned that being funny is not necessarily the same thing as being able to write comedy. It's totally different. But that changed my life too. Because it was like I was doing something where I was being recognized for my humor and not what I look like when I was in my early 20s. And if you can do stand-up comedy, if you can get on stage and bomb and do stand-up comedy or do good or bomb, you can do anything. Because there's nothing more terrifying in the world than doing that. So it set me up in such a great way doing that. There is nothing that makes me uncomfortable to talk about or situationally or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean,
I've thought about doing that.
It's the
stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
But to your point, like it's one thing to be funny, like situationally, and then another one to like actually write jokes for people and deliver it and be like, have stage presence. You know?
I mean, you know, what I found.
But like fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And like what I found was like, I'm not a good joke writer. Like I think the only joke that I ever wrote was like, you know, I have an emergency roadside kit in the back of my car and it has peroxide, a black mini skirt and heels. What? That was my great joke. But thank you, folks. I'm here all week. All right. I mean, like I can't write jokes, but again, like it was really more just about like the delivery and the confidence of being able to be on, you know, on a stage and telling stories. I'm more of a storyteller than I am a set up punchline joke person. But at the same time, when you have that, like to be able to communicate with people, I don't know, it's like a good combination of both, right? Because like I can be an intense asshole and some people are like, Jesus, you know what I mean? But it's also being able to have the combination of both, of knowing when to push and pull. And that's how you can work well with people, or like doing the show like Revenge Body, you know, doing these shows where you are in a transformation show and you have 16 weeks on camera to change somebody. You know, you need to be able to manage people, because like I can't say to the people, don't make me look bad. Don't make me look bad. Like you can't say that. So you know, it's a whole thing to be able to motivate somebody to do all this and change their life and their mind and do it where they feel empowered and not feel shamed and want to show up for you. You know, that's a whole thing. So
yeah, that is a whole thing.
Yeah. It's not just give them a program and be like, okay, do it. You know, there's so much psychology behind helping people.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier your programs with Lisa. So tell us what you're doing now, how you help women now, your programs you offer, and how people can connect with you and get in touch with you and work with you.
I have about 11 standalone full body programs that are like PDFs, right? That are programs that we've run with, these are not ones that are not with Lisa. This is when I did Revenge Body. And these are programs that we actually used with people. Brian Redfern and I created these called AB Fit programs. Those are on my website. So those are like, if you want to have like a 16-week program that you just want the PDF, it's full body. One is Build and Burn, that is about getting stronger and building more muscle. One is Strong and Sleek, which is like if you have a lot of body fat to lose, and you're in a gym doing that. The programs that I do with Lisa are, I love these. So the way that we do these are a little different, because the standalone programs, same thing, right? You get your program, the videos are embedded in the program. So you don't have to like search back and forth of what am I doing and all that. You have all the support of when we ran these live. So you have all of our Zoom meetings also that break everything down for it. Cool. And these are the goal-oriented programs that are 4 weeks. Right now, Lisa and I are running our biggest program that we've done, which is called Elite. And Elite is a 16-week, 5-time-a-week program. But the way that we do these is we have a Facebook group where, for instance, like, so let's say in Elite, and let's say you're following it, Laura, we're like, okay, the strength portion of the workouts, you are going to post your video of you doing it, your first set and your last set in the Facebook group. And then we cue you. I might be like, let's say you were doing dumbbell bench press. I look at it and I'd say like, okay, Laura, your thumbs are coming a little too high on your chest. Bring them down to the base of your chest, pinch your shoulder blades more, and push your rib cage up to the ceiling way more to create an arch. Like we would be typing that in, right? And then you're putting another one, doing the next one. So it's this community that we have with the cueing of everything, because both Lisa and I are excellent cuers. So people feel supported in this group, but they're doing the workout on their own. So this has been one of the best ways that we've been able to get people set up to feel empowered to train on their own, but they have us. It's kind of like legacy, what we do in our business group, right? We're running our business on our own, but we have this group that we can go to support us and give us direction and do that. And so it's the same thing that we do with Elite. And it's our highest,
that's amazing.
It's our highest touch point. Yeah. We've had, I can't even tell you the emotional changes, the physical changes, the revelations people are having, because we also do pop-up classes and mindset work throughout the 16 weeks. Somebody had said, you know what I love about your group, Ashley, is that you guys always give us things that do this, try this, as opposed to don't do this, don't do that, stop doing this, eliminate that. I was like, oh, what great feedback. Like that's what they're hearing, you know? And so it's just been incredible. We have people from all over the world, Australia and Iceland and here and the UK and all over that are in this group of women in all different levels. So we are running that until the end of August. And then we're going to start doing live protocols again with groups. So, you know, that is just
super cool.
It's been a great, you know, Lisa's a world-class power lifter. She's actually a professional athlete in powerlifting. So it's been such a great addition to have that feedback in with the group of somebody who is so tied in with barbell work. And then I have such a great handle on the psychology. We're a great team in that way to have that. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love that. And so Elite would be for whom?
Well, we only do Elite once or twice a year. So Elite would be for anybody who is really ready to feel like they are in a group where they have accountability for a period of time to completely change over the way that they're approaching their training. We have people who are never done training before, who are in the group. And then we have people who are advanced barbell work, right? Who have been doing it. So we have group A and group B within this. So we have two separate pods that we're doing at the same time. Yeah. And all of our protocols also are for confident beginners to advanced athletes. This is what's great about all these programs, or even my body foundation class that I do live. Everything is scalable depending on what weight you use. So it's not like, it's not like step aerobics where it's like, we're doing step aerobics and you're like, this is too easy for me. This is strength training and circuit training. So you choose the weights, you choose what's right for you. You move through this at your pace. So it's really for anybody. You know what I mean? You can scale it according to what your capacity is.
Very cool. So you have the squat protocol, the pull-up protocol, and then the core protocol.
And we always say start with the core protocol first. I think that is the best foundation for everything that we do. It's the same equipment of everything that you use in all the protocols. So everything scales into the next one, or if you want to start with squat, then do core, then do pull-up. Then you would move into Elite, when we start opening it up again to see if that's right for you. And doing that. I also do my classes that are live. So I started in COVID teaching class called the Body Foundation, which is the live version of my streaming program. I have two streaming programs also called two streaming programs that are, one is 6 weeks to Sculpted, and it's a 6-week streaming program. And then one is called the Body Foundation. It's a 21-day no equipment program for streaming. But then I teach live Body Foundation. That is with dumbbells, and that's every Tuesday and Thursday. And I give people 2 weeks free access to participate, take class, see if it's for them, and they love it. And we've been doing this for, it's like 3 years now. And I love it. I do it every Tuesday and Thursday. I love it because it keeps me fresh with teaching. And I love teaching, and the class is friggin' great. And it's a great app. So it's like $89 a month for the class twice a week.
So cool.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then if people, some people ask, well, how come you don't have anything on there to apply to do one-on-one training? And I said, well, because I don't really take on one-on-one training clients. I don't really have the capacity, but if it's situational, sometimes I will. And it really just depends on the situation and the person. So usually I'll say, if they can find the way to email me, then that tells me that they really want to do it. Like, I don't make it that easy on purpose just because it's I want to see if that's the case. But there's so many different options and ways to work together and just be the best version of you. That is my motto of my business. And that's why I still always say that, you want to just focus on being the best, strongest version of you, not me, not Laura, not your friend. It's like not a celebrity, focus on making you the best version of you. And then you don't feel like you're spinning your wheels all the time.
You're just comparing yourself to you, right? Your previous version and moving forward.
Exactly. And the only people who really can compare themselves with somebody is an identical twin. So if you are identical twins, like my old neighbor who I loved, he is identical twin with his brother, Pavel and Paul. And Pavel trained all the time. Paul never worked out ever. So Pavel used to always take his shirt off, and so would Paul. And Paul would be like, this is my after. This is what I would look like if I trained. And it was so true. He's like, oh, I could see what I would look like if I actually worked out. And Pavel's like, this is your after. But other people, we don't have that, right? So to compare yourself is such a waste of energy, Keep just focusing on you.
And we'll link Ashley's website below and where you can find her on Instagram. So anything you want to leave our listeners with? We talked a lot about a lot of different things today.
Very me to be all over the place. I would say that you need to stick with something that feels right. I know that especially on social media, there's so much. And if you're slightly susceptible to influence, you're going to feel crazy because you're going to be like, oh my God. There's 1 billion people on Instagram. You can't continue to swipe this one. I'm going to swipe. Let me do this one. You'll feel insane. So if you feel like somebody speaks to your soul with the information they're delivering, stay with them. If you hear Laura and you're like, oh my God, she speaks to my soul of what I need, then stop looking everywhere else and give it a good period of time to invest in that. You know what I mean? Like the quick fixes of things and changing, it doesn't work like that. This Ozempic thing, or am I pronouncing it right? Ozempic. Reminds me of hydroxycuts. Do you remember hydroxycuts?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And fen-phen.
Okay. Surprise. You're taking all this stuff and you've lost us. Well, by the way, it's going to end. You have to get off of it.
I can't tell you how many clients of mine have told me of their friends. All their friends are on it. Doctors just prescribing it. And now people that really need it don't have access to it because all of these women are now wanting it because they want to lose 10 pounds.
But also I understand that maybe you felt like you've never had the chance, right? But here's my issue is that you don't have the real tools to support you with what you want to do. I could put you in a closet and you'll lose all the weight. I could do a weight loss show where I just starve you out for a period of time. And guess what? You'll lose a lot of weight. And then I release you back into the wild and you're back to where you were before because you have no new habits. You have no new information. Right. You're not doing anything differently other than taking something to stop you from eating more because it's affecting your system to tell you that you're not hungry. And food is not the enemy. Everyone's like, I just don't want to eat. I want to just stop. I got to stop eating. I just need to not eat. They act like food is like a fungus or you know what I mean? I just want no food. I just need to stop stop my hunger. It's no, your hunger is telling you need to feed yourself. We don't want to quell. This is not 1981. We are in 2023. We're not trying to not eat food anymore. We're just trying to eat in ways that your body can only process so much food at a period of time. This is why we try to get through overeating. The reason why you gain weight is because we eat too much food at once and your body can't metabolize it. So then you hold on to it. Okay. So now what happens when you get off of this drug? Just tell me what's the game plan now when we get off of this? What is the game plan? You have no new tools. That's my concern. Now what are we doing?
Yeah, it's the same thing with any fad diet, right? Even a 30-day keto or 21-day fat loss plan. It's okay, you might lose the weight in that 20 or 30 days, but then what are you doing after on day 31? Is there a nutrition plan for day 31 or day 32? Right? Yeah. And how are you you have not learned how to ingrain any habits into your lifestyle or make anything work for you. And but I think we can look back in hindsight because we have had that experience, right? At least I know that I have, right? And so I think in hindsight for us, we're oh, the habits and behaviors is what creates the foundation for us to show up consistently in the gym, to consistently make better food choices. And now we eat because of how food makes us feel.
Right.
But not everyone does that. Not everyone does that. Not everyone realizes, oh, when I eat more nourishing foods, which will also help me feel strong, which will also help me stay leaner if that's what I want. Oh, that's the same food that also helps me feel good. People are still not there. A lot of people still aren't there.
Yeah. And I'm like, first of all, just a side note, I'm thinking about it. When I see somebody who's posting something like, Lizzo, okay, like, great, live your best life. Like, why are people so obsessed with the fact that she wants to get on stage? She's a performer. She's comfortable with what she's doing. I have no idea. Like, we have no idea what people are doing. Like, I don't understand the obsession to put people down because somebody looks differently than what you do, or I just don't understand. That was just a side note with that. Like, I do not understand that. But at the same time,
I love Lizzo.
Yeah. But at the same time, I want people to know, I'm sure you talk about this too. You can appear to be overweight, and actually your blood work and everything could be better sometimes than somebody who might appear to look like they're not overweight.
Yeah, and I saw someone post something, I know, like on their Instagram, like, oh yeah, take Lizzo's advice. She's overweight and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not even going to get into this with this person because, that was like my previous version of myself being whatever. But Lizzo exercises regularly. Lizzo, she may not need, like, she eats some of her like most culturally tasty foods, which she's like, I like these types of foods, right? I like my fried chicken. I like my collard greens. I've watched her shows, right? But she also shows up and she nourishes her body in the best ways that she can most of the time. But she also exercises, right? She's just a bigger girl. She just has more body fat on her body. She's not going to be someone that is going to be stick thin.
And let me tell you,
that's just not her.
Let me tell you, try to do a show. I challenge somebody who's not doing this to do a show on stage, what she's doing, singing, performing, and think that is not athletic. That is such an energy output. But again, like, I see there's a couple trainers that I know who I see on her page will actually say things shaming her and saying, trying to get responses like, oh, now we're okaying people who are obese, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, first of all, we don't know what people's deal is. Like, you don't know what's really going on with anybody, and I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand being mean. I don't understand being mean, in that way.
Well, I also like using Lizzo as an example because people come to me and say, I just want to lose 5-10 pounds. I want to feel more confident. And I'm like, you have a choice to be more confident right now.
Yes.
You don't have to wait until you're 5-10 pounds lighter. Lizzo is the most confident bitch out there, and she is not thin. You don't have to be thin. Thin does not equal to being more confident. And so I just love the energy that she brings, the confidence in herself. She knows she's a work in progress in terms of her health and some of her choices, and showing up consistently to take care of her body. I see her, I follow her, and it's just
why
everyone has an opinion about something.
It is true. And it's like, I understand that. I feel that most women who will verbally eviscerate somebody, first of all, I think that is one of the meanest things you can do is talk about what somebody looks like that. I think it is so cruel. But by the way, when I was in treatment as a teenager, let's back it up real quick. When I was in treatment, there was a girl whose name was Mary, and she was obese in the treatment center with us together. She and I used to get into it because she's like, you know what, Ashley, you're just here because you want people to tell you that you're thin. Because you're an entitled, whatever she said to me, you're entitled. You want somebody to tell you you're thin. And I'm like, well, you're in here because you're lazy. You don't work out. You're lazy. That's why like, she and I would go at it. And then they made she and I have these one-on-one sessions together. And we ended up becoming best friends. But it's what changed my life and my mind around understanding all of that. And my own thing would come from my own fear when I was a teenager and being mean like that and thinking that, well, you're just not doing this. Also, what do I know? What does anybody know about anything? And I'm like, it's just not my nature, like to be mean and to do that. I just would never, somebody said, I did a post that said, go back and look at all of the words that you've said in people's posts, because you can go and see what your comments have been in your Instagram. And you should, because you need to look and see, what are you saying to people? What are you putting out in the world? What are you saying to people on Instagram? What are these responses? So, you want to, I don't know. I don't like the negativity in that way. But at the same time, like, I understand people's, their own fear. It usually just comes back to their own fear of their own stuff. And they see somebody confident. They see Lizzo in a bikini on vacation, taking a picture. Deep inside, people just, I actually really feel that people's true envy is the confidence. They're like, I can't, I'm half of, this is not my opinion. It's what I'm half her size. I would never post myself in a bikini. It's like, why not? Who cares? Like, by the way, I think nobody fucking cares.
That's your deal.
Yeah, nobody cares also.
That's your deal, not hers,
But
that's your issue.
But don't you feel like that's a big part of it too? It's like, she fronts this, or appears this confidence in what she does. And she is, because she does this all the time. And I think people feel triggered because they're not confident. And the trigger is really like, how is she so confident? And it's like, what's the standard? Like, I don't know. I'm like, you could be, like you just said, guess what? You could be confident right now.
Yeah. They're like, but I've been working so hard, and like, I don't get to do that. Like, why does she get to do that and I don't?
You do. You can too. You can get in a thong, put on a song, set your camera down, and you could shake your ass in it and then post it if you want. You know what I mean? Like, you could do that too if you want. But and you know what? Everybody, like, she is a strong woman because she doesn't turn off her comments. You know what I mean? She posts her stuff. She doesn't turn off her comments. And sweetheart. And I think that is, I don't know. I just have a lot of respect for people who are just out there doing their thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just keep doing it.
She has no choice. And I think it also shows other people that, like, there's going to be haters out there. And especially with social media, it's like everyone has an opinion now, and everyone feels ballsy now to say shit behind a camera. But anyway, I want to ask you a final question before we hop off. Of course, I like to end the podcast with, like, what's your favorite crave food? What is, like, your ultimate yum comfort crave food that you either have every day, or something that, like, you go to when you're like, I really want something tasty?
Well, I guess it depends if I'm savory or sweet. Are you
definitely
are
carob.
You a savory?
Definitely
carob and
definitely
sprouts.
Carob
and sprouts. I just want to do just like a carob sprout sandwich on 12 grain bread. That's my go-to. What if I was like totally lying? I'm like, look, you know what my go-to is just a crunchy salad. I'm just kidding. I would say it just depends on what my craving is and what I'm craving. You know what I mean? Like I said, I always have my little candy thing. So I always like have a little bit of, and I usually do like Jelly Bellies. I like Jelly Bellies because I like the flavors in it. So I like Jelly Bellies. So I always have like Jelly Belly variation in my little thing of that. And I like licorice.
Okay. Black or red?
Black. But also don't give me, listen to me. Yes. Don't you give me Panda licorice from the health food store. I will kick your ass. Okay. So I like black licorice.
We've had enough of that health food.
All right. I don't want the health food store. I like black licorice, and I really like candy. I'm really a candy girl. Like I really like candy. Cool. But certain candy, not every candy, because I don't eat partially hydrated oil. So that is something that I don't have in any of my food ever. Mm-hmm. We don't do soda and stuff like that. We don't do and then I would say like, I like pizza. My savory would be pizza. Yum. My savory would be plain cheese pizza, well done, thin-ish crust. There's a place here in LA called Proper Pizza. I like pizza. So I'd say pizza.
Nice.
I do like ice cream, but ice cream makes my stomach feel the next day. I'm like, my stomach's really upset from all the dairy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Same. So, but see, that's a perfect example, right? If I were to eat ice cream, I'm not eating it because I'm like, oh, you're a fatty. I would eat a cup of whole ice cream, not like weird diet ice cream. But if I, but sometimes I don't want to just eat a cup, and then I'm like, oh God, I'm going to feel like shit tomorrow. You know what I mean? Or like in a couple hours.
Totally.
What's your craving? What's your go-to?
I love chocolate. I'm a big chocolate girl. I've got a bag of chocolate chips in the fridge, and usually, honestly, after breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I grab a little handful and kind of satisfy my. Yeah, dark chocolate.
I love dark.
When I get my period, it's like this weekend. Ate really satisful, did well, and then I was at a party and like they didn't put the dessert out for like 2 hours. I'm like, where's the dessert? Where's it? Why isn't it just like you usually put dessert right after, right? And they finally put the cookies out, like the baked ones that you get at like the grocery store that are just like delicious, full of sugar and fat. And I was like, oh my God, the cookies are out. It's like I beeline for them and I'm like, cookie. And then it started raining. So I was stuck under this umbrella in front of the cookies. So I had one cookie and then I was like, oh my God, look at all these cookies and I have to try macadamia. Oh no. So yeah, I had some cookies this weekend.
Your cookie, is that your vibe?
Usually like
cookies?
I like every sweet, honestly. Like I liked baked goods, I like ice cream. But I'm a big chocolate girl, so it could be a chocolate chip cookie or it could be chocolate ice cream.
I like chocolate too. Not milk. Yeah. I'm not a milk. Yeah, I'm a dark.
No,
but not too dark.
It hurts my belly.
Yeah, it's the dairy. You know, some people also don't realize that they know that the difference between dark and milk chocolate is the milk, right? There's milk and there's dairy in the milk chocolate. So the dark, I don't like, but I don't like dark chocolate like 70%. I like it little. I don't like it too dark because then it brings me back to.
It is a little bitter.
Too bitter and
to carob.
And the wine. Remember one time at my house, I opened up the cabinet and I was like, oh my God, we have chocolate here. And I took out this chocolate bar and I took a bite of it and it was baker's chocolate. Do you see the chocolate trauma I grew up with? Do you see the chocolate trauma I grew up with?
I do.
So now I'm like, I do love chocolate. I do love chocolate too. But there's something about like the little pieces. I like little small things of different flavors. Like I like tapas, but I also like, like the jelly beans, like of different flavors of things. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Variety.
Yeah. Variety. And good and plenties. I like good and plenties.
Oh, you're all up in the candy
business.
Yeah. I like
that. I like candy. I like certain candy. Candy. But I mean, like, and I love say people won't talk about like, oh my God, you eat a cookie? It's like, yes, bitch, I eat cookies. I had 2 cookies. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
back to back.
Yeah, exactly. Back to back. Oh my God, you're back. You're living on the edge. You're living on the edge.
And then I went home and I laid on my ass because I was like, this bitch getting her period.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
And that's something I was actually going to talk about today on my social media. Is just like, this is what happened the last few days when I had my period. And, you're not always going to be in that 80-20 sort of ratio that I like to coach my clients on. And it's okay.
Yeah. Life goes on and doesn't have to derail. That's the thing. I think that's what also can help people is to really just like a takeaway is like, it's not, your life isn't derailed if your food is off for a meal or a day or even 2 days or 3 days.
Right.
You can always turn it back. It's not over. It's not like, oh,
exactly.
I guess we need to really dig into the bad stuff now because you know what I mean? It just doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to be that heavy with it. I think we put this on ourselves, just like your 2-hour coffee torture session that you would do to yourself.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And
all the diets were torture.
And the diets are like, who is the person putting this pressure on? It's ourselves. I mean, like, and you don't need that. I mean, I think I love what you're doing. I really do love what you're doing. I think it's so great. And I think people need this desperately.
Yeah, it's helped a lot of women. And I feel very honored that I get to share my strategies and it's helping.
Yeah.
So
it's so good.
It feels good.
So good. Well, I love that we got to talk about it. I feel like I could talk to you for another 4 hours.
Yeah.
Where's your chi?
No, we're good.
I want to see your chi.
Oh, he's sleeping downstairs.
Oh, he is. Because he knows not to be upstairs being allowed chi.
No, he just did not want to come up. He's like, I have the whole couch to myself plus multiple blankets. Like, bitch, I'll see you later.
Does he burrow under the blankets?
Yes. Full on burrow under.
He always is burrow. Even in the middle of the summer, he burrows like, I'm like, Are you hot? Like I always check to make sure he's living.
Yeah.
I'm like, have I smothered you? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we have to like I always said they should make things like on couches that are like little flags that you could put under the blankets where the cheese are. So you don't sit on them because you sit on. Sit on
So many people have almost sat on Jackson. Oh my God. It's been death.
I know.
Or life.
That's what I'm saying. You got to put little chi flags down on where they're lying down underneath the blankets.
You need to create those.
Oh my God. We got to do. And I also love that. I didn't know they were called cheese for the longest time. And now I know. So cute. He's such a good boy. They're so cute.
Maybe the cover of our podcast will be us holding our two.
Oh my God. It should be. It
or maybe send me a picture of you.
Okay, or it'll just be their faces. Like it'll just be them, not us.
Oh my God, that'd be too cute.
I mean, come on. Look at he is such a handsome. Oh, this is when he wasn't feeling well. That's when he wasn't feeling well. Oh, see, he looks like a not feeling well chi there. And now he's feeling so much better, but he wasn't feeling well there. Yeah. Now he's so much better. All right, look, let me just start showing you everything from my phone now. Is that what's happening? We're like, oh my God, look at this. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's like, okay, is this podcast over? No. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Of course, Laura. Thanks for having me on. I love it.
Yeah. We should have another discussion about at another time. Maybe we'll dive into nutrition a little bit more.
Let's do it. I love it. We could totally do it. And you're like, let's dive into nutrition. I'm like, let's talk about narcissism. Perfect. Same thing. All right.
Yeah, I'll let you talk about that. I don't know anything about it.
You'd be surprised. You probably do. And you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute. I'm a reluctant expert. How is this? How is this? Yeah, I would love it. But I would love to talk about the nutrition. I would love to, because I love your approach. And I like that it's not so like good or bad. Shame, being, shame. I love that. Yeah. I love that. I would love it. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being on. And I can't wait for this to come out.
Me too.
Bye, Ashley.
I'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome. Bye.